Hey guys, Tomboy61, and today we're talking first impressions of aircraft carriers. It's been about a week, 5 days. I've gotten through all of the challenges for the current Tier 3 carriers. It's the first week of testing, and this is just going to be my initial thoughts, my initial feelings on aircraft carriers, where I think they're going to fall, and all that sort of stuff. But before we talk about that, let's go ahead and talk about our comment of the day. Comment of the day goes out to someone who comments on one of our previous videos. Today's comment of the day goes out to Matthew Riley. He says, "Weird ugly duckling. Pretty much all of Germany's World War II design projects." And yeah, I know I said that in the review, and I would kind of agree. Siegfried, of course, didn't come to fruition, but I think my personal favorite weird German design project is the Landkreuzer, just because an 1,000-ton tank is just crazy, and part of me wishes it would have come to fruition just because of how crazy it is, but I mean, probably a good thing it didn't. I don't know if it would actually move though, so who knows. Anyway, let's get back to the topic of the video. Carriers have now been out for about 5 days during this initial test, and I'm really liking where they are sitting because they are definitely fitting into a niche that I didn't think we needed, but is definitely an interesting one. And that's the one of a aircraft that one is a support play. That's really what it feels like aircraft carriers are going to be. They're going to be a support unit to kind of shore up certain flanks, to provide spotting, and to burn utility. Those are the three main advantages I think we are going to see to the aircraft carrier. So what do I mean by all of that? First off, shoring up the flanks, and by that I mean, let's look at the airspeed we're at right now. 120 knots. The fastest destroyer in the game maxes at 40. These planes have the ability to be 3 times faster than anything else in the game right now, which means if you are watching the map, which is what a carrier player is going to have to do, they are going to be a very map-aware kind of player to be a good one, then they are able to provide and go to areas to help support friendlies and to provide either harassing fire or that little bit extra bit of damage. One thing that I don't think we're seeing a lot of, but I think will come to fruition once we have non-bot filled games, is the ability for the aircraft to push ships out of positioning, especially with the torpedo bombers. With the torpedo bombers, I feel like the ships have a very long time to know where they are coming from and to see just to try to take that avoiding action. And if the ships decide to take that avoiding action, they may then open up their sides to a little bit more damage, or they could choose to go ahead and eat the torpedo or the dive bomber. But once again, I think the torpedo bombers are really strong. Right now, the balance between torpedo bombers and HE is a little weird because if we look, the HE bombers tend to actually do more damage, but it is definitely a harder strike to land. Personally, I have found myself multiple times lining up strikes and dropping and just hitting one bomb. And with torpedoes, I definitely feel like I'm hitting more. The other thing with the torpedo bombers is because the torpedoes have a range on the plane of the ground, you're able to let them go and kind of drive them into ships. So you're able to turn them, aim them, and basically flip right back around and line up a repeat shot. But when you're in those dive bombers, you don't really have that opportunity. It very much feels like you either need to hit the ship from the front, from the bow, or from the stern. And if you don't do that, then you aren't going to really get a hit. You have a very small percentage chance of getting the hit. Where if you, with the torpedo bombers, you just saw us there, we flipped, burned, and were able to get 2 fairly rapid strikes done on that battleship. Now, the other thing that I want to say is with that speed, I think we're also going to see that these carriers become basically spotters and hunter killers. They're going to be able to see the ships that have been grayed out from spotting on the map and attempt to kind of hunt them down and find them. I'm looking at destroyers. I think they're definitely going to be sort of a destroyer hunter, but not one that can actually, or at least in our current build at tier 3, mind you, we may get new weapons and things that become more effective with destroyers, but with our current weapons, it's very hard to hit destroyers. So I don't see them becoming a direct counter to destroyers, but instead a soft counter in the way that they're able to spot them, so that if you have teammates who are paying attention and playing correctly, when they see that a destroyer is out in the open and lit, they're going to be able to then shoot the destroyer and cause damage. And, just overall, you are going to be providing that ability and that utility that previously wasn't really there. The last thing I see carriers doing, and I think this is the most like meta kind of concept, is they're going to be there to burn utility. And that's a phrase that I'm kind of borrowing from Rainbow Six Siege. That's one game that I played a ton of. And utility is basically the charges that they have. In this case, I'm thinking about the damage control party. In Rainbow Six Siege, it would be a gadget that forces you to basically use up your grenades to get through an area. And in this case, it's, hey, maybe if I can go ahead and cause that fire or cause a flood with the torpedoes, then when my enemy team gets closer, they're going to be able to cause a permanent fire or a permanent flood. We are seeing, or at least with the torpedoes, there's a fairly low percentage chance of floods with these torpedoes, where I'm definitely seeing a higher percent chance of fires on the dive bombers. But overall, I think that's going to be the other key thing that we are seeing the aircraft carrier do, and that is just being there to kind of burn off the damage control party in the hopes that you are going to be able to set a longer term fire or a longer term flood. I think there is going to have to be some balancing action within that, just because as of right now we are seeing a very low percentage chance of that flood, and that may be where we really want to stay. The damage overall, like the alpha damage, the per hit damage that these planes are doing isn't very extreme. It takes a couple of hits. It takes a lot of hits to take down a ship, so you're really being kind of a nuisance, kind of a fly. Now, on the flip side of that, in the games where I've been able to play full matches with aircraft carrier, I have to say I have been loving playing against the aircraft carriers, just because it makes the game feel more dynamic, if that makes sense. Like having planes come in and taking avoiding action. The first time I had to do it, I was in a destroyer, and it felt like the coolest thing I have ever done in this game, of recognizing that the torpedo bombers are making a run at me and I have to dodge out of the way, or that the dive bombers are coming in and the HE bombs explode right next to me and it's a narrow miss or one hit. Like, it is such a fun feeling that I'm having that I wasn't expecting to have. And I, for one, am actually really, really enjoying the kind of added dynamic bit of the combat. Now, once again, that's because right now the planes are really only doing chip damage. I wouldn't say they are causing a significant amount of damage. I think over time they're doing, if you're having a good carrier game, you are seeing a little bit of damage kind of build up and add up. But overall, taking the one or two hits, it doesn't really feel that bad as the player on the receiving end. And I think that also has to do with the AA fire, and if you have a ship that has decent AA, how quickly you're kind of dealing with these planes, and how you kind of see the chip damage, or you kind of see how, okay, one plane's down, two planes down, 3, 4, and like just how quickly that squadron can dissipate. And also on the fact that once the squadron does its run, they're losing essentially a third of their health each time. So unless you don't have AA, or unless you're kind of not playing too well, you're only really taking 2 hits from a squadron, and then it's another full almost minute and a half, 2 minutes, depending on how that aircraft player is playing and their positioning, for them to refly out another squadron to your position. So for them, it's much more advantageous just to kind of tickle you and run away and maybe kind of concentrate. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying the aircraft carrier so far. I'm very excited for next week for the tier 5s, because I definitely feel like that's going to be the litmus test, because tier 3 ships aren't always the best ships, but they start to give us an idea of what the class is going to be. And I think next week is going to be the full reveal, the full coming out party for carriers, for us to see just how much damage they can do, just what kind of role they fit in. I would think, and this is just kind of a weird game design thing, I would almost want to see different utility added to the aircraft carrier. I know it doesn't make sense from a historical perspective or anything like that, but from like a weird gameplay perspective, if you were able to like resupply supplies or consumables to friendly ships, or provide support, kind of be like that healer role that we see in other games, like in MOBAs and such. I don't know if it fits in World of Warships, but I think there could be a really weird game mode where instead of dropping bombs that hurt the enemy, the aircraft carrier is able to be a healer where the bombs heal friendly ships, and it's just kind of a war of attrition and hunt the aircraft carrier. Like, that could be a fun limited time mode. I don't know if I'd want it in the permanent game, but it's just one of those things where, like, having these things, having planes that can now cover the full map in such a short amount of time means we're going to see a definite shift, and I'm hoping it's for the better. Right now, I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, next week is going to be that litmus test, or at least it's going to give us a better picture of where they are. Right now, I'm happy with where the aircraft carriers are. I think they provide an interesting new layer, and once we get into games that aren't as filled with bots, I think that's the other kind of issue right now, is we are seeing not very prolonged games in the aircraft carriers. So things like losing a bunch of planes isn't really hurting you as much. I mean, mind you, they regenerate one plane every about minute, but we're not seeing that attrition of trying to keep your planes alive. We're not seeing the penalty of if you are burning out your planes, like if you are constantly losing them. We're not seeing any penalty for that right now. So I would definitely be interested to see, once we get more players on each team as opposed to just bots, where that all falls. The last thing I'm going to say is, I think if carriers are the way they are now, I think it may be beneficial to bump out the player count on each team by one. I like the idea of 3 of each, 3 of each, 3 of each, and then one carrier. Just because right now, the way it feels in these battles is you are creating a strong, you're even already, the balancing was there's a strong and a weak side, but now there's really a strong and a weak side because one of the ships is being pulled away to be an aircraft carrier, and I feel like it doesn't feel as good as I would want it to, but I think if we bumped up the player count by one and just dedicated that one slot to aircraft carriers, I think it could bring a very interesting balance. So yeah, that is aircraft carriers in World of Warship Legends. Those are my first impressions of them. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. Guys, if you liked the video, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow me on all of the social media. That's Instagram, that's Twitter, that's Twitch. All those links are down in the description below, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See ya.